Hello guys and welcome back to another video. Everybody is talking about the new M1 equipped MacBooks and Mac Mini, as they are pretty great, but something those computers are lacking is user upgradability, user repairability, and proven long-term reliability. But that's something that the 2012 13-inch MacBook Pro has in abundance. So why is this 8-year-old laptop that I got for $150 still a great deal in 2020? Let's take a look. About 4 months ago, I bought this MacBook, but was sent the wrong one at first. They let me keep the wrong one they sent. If you haven't seen that video, it's linked on screen now and in the description below. For a $150 i5 MacBook Pro, it's in very good condition. No corners dented in, and the screen hinge feels solid. The battery is still holding a charge even after sitting for a few months, and the 2012 model also features USB 3.0 ports. This is the non-Retina 13-inch model, with a screen resolution of 1280 by 800, so not exactly an amazing panel. In fact, taking a look at the ports, they're in need of a good cleaning, along with the rest of the laptop. All the grime between the keys is definitely off-putting, but does it actually work? With the push of the power button, it springs into life. Installed is a copy of 10.10 Yosemite. I will be upgrading this to the latest supported OS, which is 10.15 Catalina. As we can see, it's got the base 4GB of RAM and a fairly slow 500GB hard drive. So this MacBook is definitely not as dirty as some laptops we've seen on this channel, but I'll give it a wipe down with some eucalyptus oil to make it a little bit more sanitary before we take it apart further. As I always say, be sure to clean any electronics you buy online. You never know who has been handling them. It's time to see what the specimen is like inside. The bottom casing is held in place by 10 small Phillips head screws. Then it's a matter of simply lifting up, which reveals the mostly dust-free internals. If you've watched some of my other videos, you'd know it can get a lot worse than this. Finding parts for these MacBooks is also very easy. The A1322 battery that's in here was used from 2009 through to mid-2012. This particular battery has the clips starting to break apart. This is a very common occurrence. I'll simply glue the cracked pieces back together. This was a little bit easier said than done though. Quite a few times I accidentally glued the small broken off pieces to my finger. Another great thing about this model is it's easy to remove and upgrade the internal hard disk. The slow 5400 RPM drive is going to be replaced with a cheap SSD later in the video. To begin the logic board removal, there are 3 Torx T6 screws holding the single fan in place. Looking at the cooling fins, there is next to no dust buildup. Alternatively, it can look like a carpet if used in a dusty environment for several years. When you're taking apart laptops, I'd recommend getting a segmented container to help keep track of the different types of screws. A lot of them look pretty similar, but will only fit properly in the correct locations. The microphone must also be dislodged from the casing as it comes out with the logic board. And with all the screws removed, the board can finally be gently lifted out. As expected, the surface is coated with a layer of dust. Once again, I have seen much worse. Considering how hot these processors run, the cooling solution doesn't really feel adequate. Before we see just how bad that thermal paste is, I'd like to thank Ridge for sponsoring today's video. If you're after a sleek, compact, and durable wallet, head over to ridge.com/Psivewri for 10% off and free worldwide shipping. I've actually been using this cobalt titanium model for quite a few months and it's held up really well. I would highly recommend it, and there's no way I'm going back to a conventional wallet. So thank you to Ridge for sponsoring this video. Let's continue. Removing the heatsink, we can see that the old paste is very, very dry indeed. With a quick brush down, the board has a lot less dust on it. And while I had the vacuum out, I went over the rest of the casing, which was also caked in a soft layer of dust. A small amount of isopropyl alcohol removed any leftover debris that the brushing had left behind. Another bonus the A1278 MacBook models have is the fact you can swap out the DVD drive for a second hard drive in an enclosure. Personally, I'll keep the DVD drive as it's quite useful to me, and the fact this laptop has USB 3 means external storage is going to be pretty fast anyway. Now here comes the fun part, removing that old crusty thermal paste. Some Q-tips and isopropyl alcohol make it very easy to get the surface clean and free of old paste. The paste simply flakes off, it's really that dry. My thermal paste of choice is Arctic MX4, a great value paste that transfers heat very effectively. With the heatsink pressed back on, the paste will spread thinly and evenly over the CPU die. Other gunk and grime always seems to build up along the edges of the casing. I'm not entirely sure what this is, and honestly, I'd rather not know what it is. On closer inspection, the portholes look just as bad. A bit of isopropyl alcohol is all that's needed though. When you put the board back in, make sure you don't trap any of the connectors underneath. There are quite a few, so take your time. The freshly cleaned out fan is looking good as new. If you're ever taking apart your laptop, I'd strongly suggest you clean out the fan while you're at it. The solid state drive I'll be putting in is fairly cheap, but it'll give the MacBook a good boost in terms of responsiveness. Since this uses a SATA 3 interface, it'll take full advantage of more expensive, faster drives such as the 860 EVO by Samsung. With the battery clip glued back together, I put it back in along with 8GB of DDR3 memory. And with that, the laptop is back together once again. I gave all the surfaces a clean with some eucalyptus oil and a bit of iso alcohol as well. Getting in between the keycaps really helped remove the discoloration which formed by grubby fingers. If you're ever selling off your old devices, do the world a favor and clean them first. Last of all was the display, which ended up looking spotless. If you want one of the last truly upgradable MacBooks, one of these mid-2012 models is your best bet. It's also the oldest generation of MacBook that is natively supported up to macOS Catalina, which runs really smooth on here. Another thing I love about these machines are the trackpads, still better than what you get on most Windows-based laptops to this very day. But how capable is the 3rd generation i5 processor in this particular MacBook? The first thing I did was load up Steam, which gave me a warning about Catalina not being able to run 32-bit applications. If this is important to you, perhaps use an older version of macOS. Yet, when I ran Terraria, it was very playable and hit close to 60 frames per second pretty consistently. If you've never played this game, you're really missing out. Another game I always try out on older laptops is old school RuneScape. If you're like me and used to play this game many years ago, leave some of the memories you have in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. For the past 7 months or so, I've been running a Minecraft server. It's crazy that hundreds of you have actually joined it. And with the render distance set to 10, I was getting nearly 60 frames per second all the time. This is very playable on this laptop. When it comes to YouTube playback, this device can easily handle full HD resolutions. Web browsing in general has actually been a very great experience on here, even with the relatively low resolution display. Speaking of the display, let's see just how color accurate and bright it really is. With all the lights off to avoid glare, I ran the test which gives us these results. 325 nits of brightness and 85% coverage of the sRGB color space. And when it comes to performance benchmarks, it reached a score of 382 in Unigine Heaven, 1,487 points in Cinebench R3 multi-core test, and these low but expected scores in Geekbench 5. As far as value is concerned, these can be picked up cheap. Upgrading the RAM and hard disk is super easy. Having Gigabit Ethernet, Thunderbolt, Firewire, and USB 3 is super handy. And I don't know about you, but I still find having an optical drive pretty useful. All these little quality of life features make it a compelling notebook that still has many more years of life left in it. This particular one is in excellent condition. You'll commonly find the corners dented in though on these MacBooks. For $150 you can't expect it to have amazing performance, but the dual-core i5 is capable enough for what most people use laptops for. And at just over 2 kilograms, it isn't a light machine, but having all that upgradability and selection of ports in such a small frame is a decent trade-off. While this MacBook Pro is over 8 years old now, it is still a great little machine, and with a few inexpensive upgrades, it should be usable for many more years to come. Thank you very much for watching. If you've liked the video, feel free to leave a like, and if you want to see more, definitely consider subscribing. I'll have a few more videos out to you before the end of the year. You have a good one, and I'll see you next time.